Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, the college football programs that have the brightest futures over the next 3 to 5 years. Dill, you have your top 10 list. The roles are kind of reversed here, right? Normally it's my list and you tear into it. I've taken a look at your list. I got plenty of problems with the list, as I'm sure many of the listeners do too. Y'all let it fly in the comment section. Dill, I'm sure you'll be down there battling it out. That's the beauty of talking ball in the end of February. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I think this is such a fun conversation because college football is changing. And it's like the programs who are adapting to the change the best are some of the teams that we're going to see on this list. And you look at a team that just seems like is exponentially going in the right direction. Coach Sark and the Texas Longhorns. What has you buying as much stock as you are in Texas over the next 5 years?
I just think when I look can you spot an issue with this program right now,
No.
aside from the fact that they have won a national championship yet? That's maybe the one thing you can say. But I look at the way he's rebuilt this Texas team into a team that was always kind of thought, or at least from my point of view, always thought to be kind of soft on defense. They didn't tackle well. They didn't play good there. They didn't play good on the offensive line. They couldn't run the ball. I look at he's always going to attract or be able to attract good quarterbacks and play good offense and be able to be explosive with the wide receivers he can bring in. But the fact that he's been able to develop really high-level offensive linemen from high school to the NFL draft, develop really good defensive players on all fronts, front seven, back end guys. He's just been able to revamp what this Texas culture is from being a showy, flashy team to being a team that still has those things but can play really physical with anyone.
Yeah, Texas was always that team that even when they were good in the Big 12, you looked at them and said, can they hang with the top SEC programs in the country along the line of scrimmage? I would go as far to say not only are they hanging on the line of scrimmage with the teams like Georgia, though they've become one of the most physically dominant teams across the country on the line of scrimmage.
And they're doing it the right way. They're not relying so heavily on the portal. Maybe the one place interior defensive line play, you'd probably like to see them build a better pipeline. I look at the class they have.
That's coming.
25, really good group of defensive tackles. So again, I look with the resources Texas is going to have for this modern era college football. I think Steve Sarkisian wants to be there and be dominant at Texas. That's at least a feeling I kind of get.
Yep.
I think they're in a really good position to dominate.
Yeah, and it's one of those programs where the sky's the limit. You have all, like you said, all the resources, and you happen to be in the state of Texas. You couldn't ask for a better situation, and it feels like Coach Sark has mastered what he wants this program to look like, and now it's just about getting to the top of college football. And I'll say this: it feels like Texas is on their way to winning a national championship some point in the near future. Number two, them Oregon Ducks. I probably would agree with this one too. Oregon. Dill, it just seems like there's a different level of buzz. And this is not a knock on Ohio State, not a knock on a team like Georgia. I think you have them 3-4, not to spoil your surprise here. To me, I look at it and say, similar to Texas, you haven't yet won a national championship, but you are getting better every single year. And that the trend is clearly in the right direction. The amount of pull that Oregon has on the recruiting trail right now is elite. And they're the team that I think is balancing talent acquisition best in terms of, hey, high school recruiting, you sign the number. Everybody wants to use Oregon as the poster child for transfer portal heavy program. It's not really all that true. Yeah, they use the transfer portal and they use it effectively. Go look at that 2024 team. A lot of the transfer portal additions were hits, made that team better. But it ain't like we ignoring the high school class. We just brought the number 2 class in the country in 2025. It feels like Dan Lanning's really starting to dig his teeth into this program.
And I think you said it. There is an element of the vibe and the energy around it does feel a little bit different than maybe Ohio State and Georgia, who, again, and this is the punishment for being successful, if you will. It's just they've kind of been there for so long. It doesn't have that same I can come here and really revamp and build and be the guy to do it at Oregon. So again, you're really splitting hairs. I think the top 4 teams, the Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, you probably put them in any order you want. But I look at where Dan Lanning's at, the energy. He brings his ability to hire guys in terms of coaching staff moves. I love what he's been able to do.
Such an underrated part about Dan Lanning, especially as a young head coach, how he's mastered the structure of a staff. I mean, he's
Because
got one of the
you saw it take Ryan Day 10 years almost to get his staff right. It's like you constantly were seeing guys overturn. You were constantly seeing kind of like flux, if you will. Dan Lanning, I just feel like he's almost a little further ahead from where he started than maybe you saw like a Ryan Day, for example.
Even when he needs to make a new hire, like Kenny Dillingham goes to Arizona. You want your core. You're not going to prevent your coordinators from getting head coaching jobs, and then we roll Will Stein right in, and he's money. Ohio State at 3, probably going to catch some strays. Former, the reigning national champs. Dill, I'm okay. And if you want to have Ohio State 1, you can certainly have Ohio State 1.
I think you have any of the 4. I'm not totally convinced Ryan Day is going to be there for the next 10 years. And I know he signed the deal, but I don't know. If you listen to one of those interviews that right after the national championship and all that's kind of gone on with his inability to beat Michigan, I will say that's a huge deal. As much success as they've had, that's a real problem I think to most Ohio State fans. And like, frankly, to me, it's just like, observer of college football.
Well, you're a Michigan fan, so you get it, and it was a huge product deal. Let's not forget. Let's remind the listeners that you were calling for Jim Harbaugh's head plenty of times when he was losing football games to Ohio State. It matters. And when
again, I really wonder if Ryan Day gets a crack at a really good head job, if they can kind of be successful in the next few years. I wouldn't be stunned to see him take it because, again, he hasn't really shut the door on doing it. I get that, there just feels like some friction, even with the national championship, the inability to beat Michigan and then all the kind of ramifications that have come from it with the fan base. It wouldn't stun me if he's gone. It wouldn't stun me if he's there for 20 years and they win 2 more national championships, for example. That wouldn't stun me either. But I don't think Sark and Lanning are leaving, and the energy they're kind of bringing and the positivity around the program just feels like it's all going in one way over there.
Yeah. 100%. Number 4.
Also, Ohio State, even the recruiting, it's been really, really good, but it does feel like Texas and Oregon are starting to.
There are some more players. Yeah, there are some more players, especially with Nick Saban leaving Alabama. Historically, it was always Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. You could every single year it was just roll back that top 3. Now you see Texas in there. Now you see Oregon in there. Ideally, you start seeing Michigan in there a little bit. There does seem to be some more, but I don't think that's necessarily knocking Ohio State. They command some big time talent.
And that's the thing. You could definitely put them at 1. It just again, Texas, Oregon
they're one of those. There's one of those programs that commands quarterbacks, which is probably the only knock that you have with Georgia right now. Does Georgia have? And they might land Jared Curtis in 2026, and that certainly could help. But let's be honest. If there's maybe a position where Georgia struggles landing the best of the best, it ain't on the offensive line, it ain't on the defensive line, but it is at the most important position on the football field, the quarterback spot. But Dill, it's crazy. We're talking about down year for Georgia, where they lost in the playoffs, having their quarterback.
They did beat Texas twice.
And they beat Texas twice. And then in 2023, we're Michigan fans. You asked us the one team we did not want to see in the college football playoffs. It would have been them Georgia Bulldogs. Even when they didn't win a national championship in 2023, you could have made the argument they're one of the best teams in the country. The slip has been over-exaggerated, I think, in my opinion. There are 2 concerns.
They need to do a better job of attracting high-end skill at the quarterback spot and on the offense side of the ball. The wide receiver quarterback play has not been consistent enough over Kirby Smart's tenure. And you've had defenses that have been good enough. You had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, who are just, those are transcendent players. You have them, but you don't feel like they're consistently recruiting the wide receivers they need to be like Oregon and Ohio State, Texas, those teams that land 5 stars.
My biggest concern is the line of scrimmage. And I know they've recruited it well, but to me, especially on the offensive line, this was the first year where it was not nearly the dominant Georgia line of scrimmage play we're used to seeing. And that has been the fundamental reason why Georgia was so dominant in the early 2020s.
Yeah, but I'm not giving up. I guess I'm not giving up on that yet because, again, they're doing it the way they need to do it. They still recruit the way they do. They definitely missed on some guys maybe in the past couple cycles. Not the juniors and seniors just weren't good enough up front for them. But they're still bringing in so much talent. Their blueprint in model for Georgia is still there. Right. But I think you are right. You probably like to see them.
I do. I actually have one maybe, and again, we're I'm getting up here in my basement on a Friday morning or Friday afternoon. grilling Kirby Smart in terms of how you run. I understand how ridiculous this sounds, but one other knock I kind of do have is their evaluations in the transfer portal have not been great. Like even with that 14th best class that they landed in 2024, like they didn't really Benjamin Jurasic, who I thought was going to be a stud, like just wasn't really that guy for Georgia. That's an important part. Like, can you evaluate in there are the additions that you're making in the portal guys that elevate you enough? And I look at this transfer portal class too. I look at a guy like Jaden Harris and say, I don't know, he didn't work at Miami. Why are you bringing him to Georgia? There are some question marks in terms of their evals in the transfer portal too. Number 5, that Michigan Wolverines. I love it. And Dill, as a Michigan fan, the ideal scenario here is you kind of lump those top 4 together, which I think is fair. You want to see Michigan, and I think Michigan can get into that category because they have so many things rocking with them. You know, the culture's unmatched. I know I'm a Michigan fan, but I think it's some of the best culture you see in the country. Player development, very, very good. I think they have a very good coaching staff, assuming Chip Lindsey hits at the OC spot, but the rest of the coaching staff, very good. The big thing that resulted in such poor play for Michigan in 2024 was not only did you miss on the quarterback, you missed bad on the quarterback, but Dill, I mean, when you're recruiting the 19th best class in high school and you're recruiting the 20th best class, and then you're not really using the portal in any meaningful way.
Well, let's be frank. I mean, recruiting slipped towards the end of Harbaugh's tenure. Now, he had built up a culture of guys like the Mason Grahams, Will Johnson, Kenny Grant, like those type of guys were still there. So it wasn't like showing itself yet. But things were slipping. Like his dalliance with the NFL each year was certainly, I think, impacting recruiting. You look at Sharon Moore, another one of those guys that I look at, you know, is maybe you can say it's wishful thinking, but I get the sense he'll stay at Michigan as long as he can. And I think that's certainly important. And in just his energy, bringing that program back to like the hunger to be the best team in the country, like it didn't always feel like that with Harbaugh. Now, it's not to say Harbaugh wasn't trying, but it didn't feel like he was trying to do everything in his power to be good.
I disagree with that because I know Jim Harbaugh was, but it's like he did not. This Michigan program did not recruit the way it should be recruiting, and I don't know what the disconnect was. But when Sharon Moore got this job, I mean, it was a ton of resources. I mean, they hired a brand new front office, they hired a brand new personnel department. That is showing itself on the recruiting trail, and if Michigan can get into that Georgia, Ohio State.
Moore's hunger to do it and desire to do it is definitely different than Harbaugh's. I think
probably agree with that.
Unobjectively true because you look like he is involved in the Ty Haywood recruitment. He is leading the way in the Bryce Underwood recruitment. So, like, his hunger to be dominant, I do think, is a little bit different from Harbaugh, who I think kind of knew he was not going to be.
Maybe it's just the semantics of that. Because it's more like just on the recruiting trail, and that's how it needs to look. If you want to be a top program consistently in college football, you have to do it. Number 6, Notre Dame. I like it. Marcus Freeman.
Talk about young, hungry coaches who I think is going to win a championship or die trying. You got one in Marcus Freeman, and another guy who you want to talk about good coaching hire. Really good. Now you can question Chris Ash, but so far he has been on point with what he's done. Staffing. Really good recruiting, and then development is it's been premier at Notre Dame for the past couple of years.
The culture development is top notch. I mean, the amount of injuries that football team had and just trotting out and not really skipping a beat. And Dill, you talk about just like coaches you want to buy stock in just as like people and like demeanor, like Marcus Freeman.
That's for sure.
Yeah, passes the vibe check in a big way. You probably do want to see them start cracking top 7, top 6, you know, in the recruiting rankings because they don't use the transfer portal a ton. That's one of those teams that they evaluate really well. They don't miss on a ton of guys coming out of high school. And even the guys that might be ranked 3 stars according to the recruiting services, I think Notre Dame likes a lot more. Number 7, I forget who you have at 7. This is when I start LSU.
What, Brian Kelly?
No, I like it.
Brian Kelly, I don't think could have reached the expectations that people had set for him because it's like if he didn't win a national championship the second he stepped on the field, I think people are going to be down his throat. You look top to bottom at what he's been doing in this LSU program. Like they're doing a really good job. Again, like kind of like Lincoln Riley, he missed big on the defensive coordinator hire the second he got there.
Yeah,
but they are recruiting well enough to be a top team in the country. Their offense has been really good. They've been developing pretty well. again, we'll have to see what this defense can become under Blake Baker, but everything about what I think I've seen from Blake Baker and what even like the steps they took last year, I kind of like the direction they're going. Brian Kelly's going to have this LSU team be good really every year. I don't know if maybe he has the ceiling you'd maybe want to see, and we'll see about that. But this team's going to be tough every year, I think.
I talked about this with the LSU fans maybe a week ago, and I think some of them agreed. Losing Bryce Underwood is almost a blessing in disguise. Obviously, the LSU fans like, shut up, idiot. We'd rather have Bryce Underwood at LSU. Yes, fair. But it lit a fire under this program. And what they did in the transfer portal, they were just wrecking hell, man. They were like, we're going to go get the guys we freaking want. And that's like the mentality you need if you want to be a top team in college football. And it seems like that loss of a guy like Bryce Underwood and maybe even a guy like Cade Phillips to Texas, it lit that fire under this program that we needed.
Because especially like last year, like that wasn't them. It's like they needed Dominic Williams. Like they needed him badly. And am I getting the open?
Yeah, no, you got it right. Because I was thinking Don McKinley, but you're right.
I was thinking it too. That's why I asked.
They had guys that they wanted.
That's a battle they couldn't lose, and they did lose it to Oklahoma. And Brian Kelly gave up and did his little interview that I don't think any LSU fan could have been a fan of when they heard it. Like, well, we're not going to pay. It's like, well, it's part of the game. You better get with it. Yeah, they're with it, and this team, when they're with it, and also his ability to, again, recruit really good high school classes and keep the guys that they want to keep. I don't think they have it hasn't seemed like a big problem losing really good players. He's going to have this team really good. Again, I don't know about the ceiling for this LSU team.
Yeah, I think the ceiling's high. We've seen I think that's probably fair.
No, this is more of a Brian Kelly thing. Like, what's his personal ceiling? Because LSU's ceiling is as high as anyone in the country, obviously. Yeah, okay. But does Brian Kelly bring you that type of energy? We'll see. But they're going to be really good every year, I believe.
Low on Bama, number 8.
I'm one huge issue is I'm not totally buying is this idea that Kalen DeBoer couldn't coach last year because like he couldn't be hard on guys, and like I don't know about that. I think that feels a little bit excuse making ish. I need to see more from him in terms of getting consistency because he's recruiting at a high level. You gotta like that, but it's really disappointing to see the inconsistencies they showed on the field with a team that was way better than I think what they finished out record wise.
Yeah,
that was a good football team he inherited from Saban.
Here are the pros for Alabama. Here is that I know Kalen DeBoer is a very good coach. He's got a long track record of being a very good coach, and he wins a lot, and he's recruiting very, very well. Like that was the big question mark I think a lot of people had is, all right, Kalen DeBoer coming to Alabama, can he recruit the way, because he never really did at Washington. He's done that. But Dill, for some reason, something just fell off in the 20. And I don't really know if I could put my finger on it, but it felt like there were some significant growing pains, which I think is expected from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. But I'm kind of with you. I'm not really ready to put Alabama in the top 5 until I see something different from Kalen DeBoer in the 2025 year. And Dill, I look at Alabama and say, I got question marks, especially at quarterback, especially on the offensive line, and say if they have another bad year in 2025, I can just see the optics of like, oh, that's a sinking ship. It's a sinking. He took over really a real healthy ship and it's sinking now. And that might even not necessarily be fair. But if it happens like that, that affects your program where it's going. Yeah. Number 9, Penn State. This seems Penn State's been 9 for the last decade.
I almost part of me wanted to go a little higher because it does feel like they are starting to want to win again, like want to win at all costs, if you will. Like, yeah, they'll go out and get Jim Knowles. They'll pay what they need to pay. They'll go out and get Colton Nicky. That was the hot name for the OC. I'd like to start seeing them doing that maybe more in the personnel department because, you look at that, that's good recruiting. It's not great use of the portal, especially when you have holes. Like, it's not like this Penn State's perfect. They need better wide receivers. There were a lot of really good wide receivers in the portal, and they come up with arguably 0 of them, very kind of mediocre talent in the wide-out room. But they develop really well. I like where they're going with the coaching staff. I almost wonder, is that going to start translating to personnel a little bit more in terms of them kind of bringing the full brunt of the resources to bear on everyone? But I'll probably still need to see it. But James Franklin doing it the way he's been doing it, they've been the 9th best team in the country. That's basically where they've been, as you
Yeah.
can say.
Now it's like, can we, and I will say, like, the hires that they made in the offseason, most notably Jim Knowles, it does give you optimism that they're going to try to take that next step. Number 10, we got Clemson. I think I'm okay
I
with
had
it,
to
though.
throw them in there because,
Yeah.
people. Okay, I know their recruiting in 2025 was bad. I think everybody
Can I
objectively
say something on that real quick? I
go
think it
for it.
gets a little, like, 26 is worse than you would expect, but Clemson recruiting fringe top 10, I'm completely fine with. You want to know why? There's not a team that I think evaluates talent better. I mean, it just seems like year after year they take these 3-star guys and they just like plug and play them, and they're awesome. Like Khalil Barnes, Ashton Hampton, Avian Terrell was a 3-star. Their evals are really good, and they got a process that I think works.
And they don't lose guys. I think that's a big part of, like, you don't necessarily need to recruit number one classes if you're
You retain
if
the
you're gonna
roster.
hang on to your high end talent,
Yeah.
you're gonna hang on to guys and develop them and play with redshirt seniors and seniors. Clemson, again, I think their recipe is gonna keep working. Like, I get, like, the 26 or the 2025 class scares me a little bit, and if they
Yes, agreed.
repeat that and they go back outside the top 20, yeah, that's not going to work unless they make a radical shift in how they use the portal, which even then, I don't think it's going to cut it. You better recruit top 15 classes if you're going to try to go be a national championship
Yeah.
contender. But that was one year, a couple of late flips that I'm sure were super disappointing. I look like this Clemson team. I don't get the sense they're going to have a bad class in 26. You might know the buzz better than me, but it doesn't feel like they have no
No.
juice or no buzz. Like, they're still getting on the top fives for the guys that they should be getting on the
And
top.
Dill, what happens if they maximize this roster they have in 2025? Because this is bona fide national
You
championship
get the
roster.
energy back in a
You
big
get
way.
the energy back of, like, this is the Clemson of old, because I do feel like that's worn off a little bit. And if they get that back, we know what Dabo Sweeney can do. And yeah, I've been on Dabo about not using the portal. I think it's something that if you have the ability to make mid-season proven commodity additions, back in 10 years ago, if you had problems with position groups, you had to wait till you recruited them out of high school and develop them. Now you have the ability to quick fix it, and not utilizing that when everyone else you're competing against is a disadvantage. But I will say the benefit is you get this continuity. And we look at this Clemson team, number one in returning production, return 4 to your 5 starting offensive linemen, your top 3 pass catchers, your quarterback. It's a good recipe. Dill, I want to just throw out some other teams that I think are worth noting. What happens?
I wanted to put Florida and South Carolina, and I'll say
There's
that.
the two on my list.
Billy
Yeah.
Napier, his
Yeah.
future scares me because if he doesn't have a good season, well, he's gone.
But then, Dill, what happens if Florida wins the amount of games we both think they can win?
Yeah, then they're top. Then they're better.
And they might be, because
Yeah.
we know what this Florida program can be when they're winning. South Carolina, they're trending in the right direction. Can they get? They got a level to jump.
I got to see where their ceiling is. That's where I still don't know it yet.
All right, USC, and I know that's a hot take, but look at what USC is doing. Like the rumblings, and look, guess what? We feel the rumblings before we see the rumblings. At least I'm feeling. That's a good analogy. That's fire. You feel the rumblings before you see them, and I'm feeling them for USC. Now, can we start to see it? And it might not be immediately in 2025, Dill. But if they can put together a season,
now can he sustain this? Because we've seen some moments of heat in this USC program. We saw it a little bit last year with Elijah Griffin and Isaiah Gibson, and that obviously came apart. You saw it with Caleb Williams his first 2 years. Can he sustain?
Can I add something?
Big time program behavior.
That's what everybody's saying, and I get it. That's a good point.
It's relevant.
Yeah, I know it's relevant, but I'm saying they've made the necessary changes to ensure they can sustain it. They didn't have a front office last year. Like Lincoln Riley was like from what I'm hearing, like in contract negotiations with NIL. That's crazy. Like not a single top 10 program has that. They all have general managers and guys to take care of that. They hired a brand new front office.
I don't love that.
What do you not love?
I don't love that. Like why did it take this long? That doesn't
I agree.
Like you got to be adaptable in the future. It can't be 2 years behind, and it feels like they've been 2 years.
Well, but what happens? Okay, they're 2 years. Yeah, you're right.
But that's a flaw in Lincoln Riley's game. Like, because there's going to be new changes, and he better be more on top of him than he was with his defensive.
All I'm saying is, all all I'm seeing is them make the necessary changes now, and it gives me optimism that they're willing to change and
I am
change
happy
things
to
up.
see the changes being made,
Yeah,
but
you can just hate, and
no,
you
I'm not
hey,
hating. Like
hating a little bit.
every other coach had to deal with the same things Lincoln Riley did. He acts like he's the only one who's dealt with
He
the
does
program.
not. I think he correctly said it. Like this is what he said in the offseason. He's like, yeah, we had some changes that we need to make. We needed to make, and I think they're making them.
But I'd
Last team.
rather see proactivity than
Okay,
reactivity. I think
last
that's
team, Miami
important.
Hurricanes, Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, you got to play better football on the field
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta. They
10
just
and 3,
they're
10 and 3,
everything
and
else about that program is working. The on
yeah,
the field play has been like kind of
agreed.
scattered.
Yeah, agreed. That's kind of where I'm at with Miami too. I wouldn't have my top 10 until I see know who's another team like that, Auburn. I don't think it's crazy that we're talking about Auburn in the top 10, 12 months from now. If they go
But
win 10 games, which they can, and then
they
they
win
stack
6
another
games last year. Got to win more than 6.
5. Yeah, they didn't make a bowl game. Yeah, so it's like they got some work to do. But Dill, I'll say like that's a team that I don't think it's crazy to
They're
talk about as
operating
a
right. That's for
they're
sure.
operating like it. And that's what you kind of are looking for because you start operating like a team before you become that team. And Auburn's operating like that team. We'll sign out there. Boys went at it in the back half. We actually agreed on more of the top 10 than I thought we were going to. Appreciate you guys. If y'all are still rocking with the boys 26 minutes in, we appreciate you. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.